my next guest is more than a guest. She's a friend. She's deeply intertwined in my family. She's also a really special soul. Samantha Rose, Sam, what can I say about you?
You're already
I'm going to say a lot about you. But first, I just want to say that the amount of compassion and love that you have in your heart and who you are is enough for this podcast. It's not about what has happened to you and what you've gone through, and we're going to talk about all that today, but it's how you've alchemized. I love that word for you because it's how you've alchemized your life and your heart, mostly your heart and your soul and your spirit, to be the person you are, having gone through an immense amount of grief. So I want to read this bio, but I just wanted to say it's such an honor to have you here and to talk to you today.
Yeah. That is a lovely introduction, and I'm already tearing up.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there were tears here today. Maybe me, maybe you, maybe me. I don't know.
Let's cue the tears. Here we go.
So let me introduce you. Samantha Rose is an Emmy Award-winning television producer and New York Times USA Today and internationally best-selling ghostwriter for nearly 20 titles. She is the principal of Yellow Sky Media, an editorial agency in California, and her newest release, Giving Up the Ghost, A Daughter's Memoir, is her first title written under her own name, which I'm so excited to talk about today. This is a deep book unraveling the mystery surrounding her mother's suicide. And what begins as a solitary journey of grief shifts from when her mother returns from the shadows beyond to reconcile her irreversible choice. It is raw and deep, and I have been privileged to know Samantha's story inside and out. And I'd love to hear, I'm all about soul stories, and sometimes our soul goes through stories in our lifetime that they're not pretty. We think of the soul and we think of beauty and grace and ease and light. But our soul comes in with a purpose. And sometimes that purpose is completely overwhelming. And your story is beautiful and also heartbreaking. And I guess I want to hear not just your story, right? Because we could tell stories all day long. I do want to hear about your book, and I want to hear about your mother and that relationship. But I mostly want to hear about how your soul got back on track and the story of your soul. So let's start first, I guess, with what is the story of what you experienced through your mother's suicide?
I think we should tell people who are listening that you and your husband are significant in this book because you are significant in the journey that became the book. So my mother, Susan Swartz, who I was very close with my whole life, she and I spoke on a Tuesday morning about 3 weeks before COVID lockdown in the spring of 2020. And we hung up the phone, and within a few hours, she took her own life. And this was shocking, as all deaths by suicide are. It was especially shocking because of our relationship. We were such confidants and intimates, and I thought I would know if she were planning something like this, or I would feel it if it were happening. And I didn't. And this became the jumping off point for me to reconcile our relationship, to figure out a lot about myself. And this became the theme in the book. So I started writing just journal entries, really taking notes when I started working with you and B.
Mm-hmm.
And that started out as an exercise in trying to unravel what had happened and why. There was so much confusion. There was so much anger I had initially. And what evolved eventually was an understanding, not an understanding of my mom, more of an understanding of my mom, at least one that made sense to me, but also coming face to face with myself, which I was not expecting. And that was a lot of the work that we did together.
Mm-hmm.
And it did not happen overnight, as you know.
Yeah.
It took a while, as it does, I think, when we are forced to reckon with who we are, especially for me, when I started to untangle who I was separate from her. She and I were so enmeshed, and my identity was so tied up in being her daughter.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's a long answer to your first question.
No, it was great. Can you tell me the quote that you wrote in your book about the moon and the sun?
Well, I started to understand a little bit more about who we were to each other, the dynamic that we had after she died, which was also a surprise. I thought I understood exactly who we were to each other. And then it was after she passed that we started to dig into that relationship. And my mom was such a bright light. She also was an author and an outspoken feminist in the community where we live in Northern California. She always had something to say. And she just was known as this vibrant, vivacious, illuminating person. And what I started to understand about myself is that I had unconsciously, I guess, spent most of my life as the moon orbiting around her and really feeding off the light that she generated. And one of the things you and B challenged me to do was to become my own light source. And I remember at first thinking, I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah. But you clearly, I mean, in writing this book, but also going through your process of grief and focusing on, what does it mean if I'm the sun? I've seen so much growth in you, and like just the fact that you are, you wrote a book and you're an author and you're a ghostwriter, but you wrote your own book about this experience. I guess my question is, how did you heal, or how do you heal with your mom being on the other side and you reclaiming that light? And suicide is such a tricky, deep, hard, layered subject, right? And so in the process of you finding your sun, your light, how do you reconcile that with the act of suicide and the deep grief that you were moving through?
I think for me, I had to go super deep into the loss and the grief and the darkness of it, to identify or to tap into my own light source. I knew pretty immediately that I needed to do that, and I needed partners to help me do that. I'd never experienced grief, and it was so intense and so present in all things, and so immediate and relentless. And given what my mom went through, and I think a lot of what led her to the edge that day is she was running away from things she didn't want to look at and she didn't want to feel. And I was pretty terrified that if I ignored grief, that it would just become a bigger, darker monster. And so I really gave into it and facing it. And I think that allowed me eventually to uncover all these truths about myself and about her, and to get to a lighter place. And nobody really wants to hear that they have to go dark and deep to get to the other side of it. And I can't speak for everybody, but I know that for me, it was definitely the answer. And again, it took quite a while. I mean, I spent most of 2020 and into 21 really deep in it, and writing. Writing for me was the active channel for me to eventually release some of that grief and tap into my own light source.
In your writing, like before you wrote the book, let's say, as it led to the book, I think, what did you find in there? You said you have to go kind of dark in order to find that light. And I'm so curious, like, I think that there's a process of unburdening and unraveling when it comes to grief. And we think of it as like this dark, it's sad and it's hard, especially losing someone to suicide. But I'm curious, like, what did you find? I see it as like a soup, right? Or like a big melting pot, a big pot. And like, as you go in there, there's layers and layers in there. And, you talk about like, I had to figure out how to orbit my own, like I am the light, I am the sun. So what was that process like for you?
Well, I started out writing this book trying to figure out more about my mother, more about her, more about why she did what she did, all the what ifs, and the hows, the whens, the whys, the what ifs. And it was so focused on her. And the more I got into the writing, the more it started to take me in different places, which is what writing will do if you allow it to and you stick with it long enough. It will show you things that you didn't know were there. And what I started to see were truths about myself. And one of the things I had been really hypercritical of her was that she had been untruthful about her mental health. And she had withheld things and kept secrets. And I was pretty mad at her about that, especially because she kept them from me. And then I started to uncover this truth that I also did the same thing, that there were things in my life that I'd not been honest about, in my own marriage and in many corners of my life. I wasn't being completely truthful either. And if I was going to write this book that was essentially calling her out and nudging other people to be honest, that I had to get pretty honest with myself.
It's a really big deal to sit with, like, the generational secrets, the stuff that if she's hiding things about her, you've learned to hide things about you as well. and then not to pass it on, or to work on not passing that on, and then to write a book about it and to be really honest about who you are, kind of pulls things out of the hiding places. Do you feel like you're still doing that, or do you feel like from the completion of this book and like, where are you now with it?
I think I'm doing less of it because I have shined a light on it and I'm now out talking about it, and I spend all that time writing about it.
Yeah.
But it's still a challenge because my default is to withdraw, to diminish. And that was one of the things I discovered too in writing the book, is this whole idea about being a ghostwriter, and that I'd spent my life, the last 20 years, writing other people's stories and putting my own life on the back burner so I could be a voice for other people. And then recognizing that not only had I become a ghost professionally, but I'd become a ghost in my personal life, and that my default is to step back, to live in the shadows, to be quiet, to dim down, that I actually trained myself to do this professionally. And it has served me. It's served my career. But they became so entangled again that it wasn't serving me in my life. And so I have to be really careful not to play that role, because I've trained myself to do it so well.
Yeah, it's so interesting how we learn things within us, and then you take that out into your profession and it seeps out into your life. And it sounds like with this loss, this intense, unfathomable loss, it forced you out of the shadows to really question who you are. I want to talk about it. I want to talk about who you are now, but I still want to kind of dive deep into what you found as you wrote this book, and what the process of writing obviously helped you with grief, but what else did you uncover as you wrote this book? Like, what gems or what insights did you uncover, maybe about your mother or about yourself or about the grief process when you were writing it?
Well, I eventually got to a place of compassion with my mom. I was, as I mentioned, critical of her and really angry. I worked a lot on that rage, and that is a big part of the book. And I mention it because it was something that I'd never been encouraged to discover.
Yeah.
And B was one to really pull that out. And you and I worked on that too, like giving me permission to be angry.
Yeah.
Which I think is difficult for a lot of women. And when I think about it, I don't know that anyone had ever encouraged that. Like, what if your anger could speak, what would it say? Like, no one had ever said that to me. Like, ooh, do I get to be mad? And so that was something I discovered in the writing, is that side of me, that piece that is not quiet, that is very vocal, but had been stuffed down for so long and not permitted to roar, right? So that was actually very exciting. I mean, it was scary initially, but then it felt really liberating to connect with that anger and to find like a channel for it that I wasn't turning it back on myself. I wasn't inappropriately putting it on other people, but I did have, again, this this place to put it, and that was on the page. And once I did that, once I started doing that with all the different feelings, the anger, the worry, the betrayal, the fear, once I was able to get that out onto the page, it did dissipate some. I mean, it didn't completely lift, and
Yeah.
I'll always have pieces of that there, right? But it was, it did lessen to a degree that I could actually physically feel a
That's
release of it.
amazing. Yeah.
And so that is something I've been able to, I hope, encourage others to do, is to find some way to channel. And I think, you work with that so much. It doesn't have to be writing. It could be anything, but some kind of active pursuit that gets it out of here, out of our bodies, and released.
I think you hit on a big thing, especially, I mean, I think women, but I think also when we go through these thresholds, which is, yours was grief. I think what a lot of us uncover is that we really don't give ourselves permission to feel that. And you started with talking about rage, right? You turned it into anger, but like, that's what you said at first was rage. And we're not really taught about rage and what to do with it and where to put it and how to release it from our bodies and how to not like affect others by our rage. It's not, I think as women, we do like a number on ourselves, a nice little gaslighting, to dance around. I think there's a book like The Dance of Anger. It's a really old book, but it has always stuck to, I think it's from like the 80s, but it's always stuck with me because when we have these thresholds, unfathomable moments like grief and suicide, there's so much in there inside of us. And it is a path of like, how am I going to get this out without hurting others? But how am I going to, I almost feel like it's like a wild animal.
It felt, it felt like there was like a wild animal running in there and just wreaking havoc in my nervous system. Like I could feel the like jagged, just energy of it.
Yeah.
And I knew that it needed to go somewhere.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, well, what do you do with it?
Right. I remember when my mom died in 2018. I remember, I mean, this is weird. It's not weird. It's actually, she died of cancer. She didn't die by suicide, but I had so much anger. And I remember crawling on the floor of my bedroom like an animal. That's what that anger feels like. And I think even in any type of grief, we don't always talk about the rage and the anger that we have because it gets kind of pushed down by the sadness and the disbelief and the shock, especially for you. And it just gets shoved down there. And I remember just like literally crawling on the floor like a wild animal and allowing myself permission to fully feel it. And I wasn't hurting anybody. Nobody was home. Right. But like to really give ourselves permission to not, and I think you and I probably resonate with this, like not be the good girl, right? Not be the like, oh, I could feel sadness, but I can't feel this. And that's not appropriate when somebody's died. And like everything is appropriate.
Well, with suicide, that definitely came up. Like, who am I to be mad that she died in this way? She was clearly suffering. What kind of horrible daughter am I to judge her?
Yeah.
And be angry. And yet I really was. And being allowed and being encouraged to feel that
Yeah.
was amazing, because what would have happened had I not allowed myself to tap into that? It would still be stuck inside me.
Right.
I'd still be wrestling with the guilt of it. Maybe I'd be more angry than I was then. And how else might it be coming out in inappropriate ways, yelling at my kid or turning it on myself, or, I'm so glad I allowed myself to work with it. Because it can be really destructive, right? But I was able to use it in a constructive way, again, by writing it. And there is a passage in there where I say all the things to my mom that I'm upset with her about. And one of them is, I'm so mad at you that I'm not supposed to be mad at you.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I could feel that one. That's huge. Like giving yourself full permission to be really mad and angry is such a big deal. I also think, Sam, I mean, I kind of know the answer, but I want to ask you your process of unraveling grief. I know I felt it when my mom passed too, but again, yours was much more of an impact. You're unraveling this grief. It's sad, it's hard, it's shock, it's rage, it's anger. Did it give you permission then to feel, you talked about hiding things. Mm-hmm. Did it then give you permission to heal with your mom the things that you were hiding from between the two of you? Like, I wonder if it unraveled things from earlier times, mm-hmm. and how you handled that as it came up.
It did. In the writing, I was able to explore pieces of our past. And also in the second part of the book, it takes a dramatic turn when I start having these dreams about her. These very vivid dreams that feel present day. They're not things that happened before. And so as a writer, I write them down. Yeah. And then I start inviting her to meet me in my dreams. After the first vivid dream where she just floats in to show me like her new cool, like celestial hairstyle. And validate for me that she's finally solved her hair problem on the other side, which is something she would totally, totally want me to know immediately. I say, okay, if that's real, like bring it. And I want to talk, I want to get into stuff. And so I invite her into my dreams. And then I also start inviting her onto the page to have dialogue in real time. Mm-hmm. And these conversations for me felt present. They weren't old conversations that we'd had in the past. They were new conversations. Mm-hmm. And through that exercise of automatic writing and dialoguing with her wherever she is, as I'm hearing her, we were able to talk through and a lot of what happened, to the point where I felt resolved. What were all questions answered? No. Can I prove that she was really there with me in the room? No. Mm-hmm. But it felt real to me. And I decided to continue the process of it and to write about it because it was ultimately healing. And I was able to get to a place of not just understanding, but compassion for her and what she must have been going through, and to release her from that place, from those final moments, to finally say, I'm not going to hold you to that last fateful moment. I'm not going to forget it.
Right.
But I'm letting you go from there because
Mm.
she deserves that. And I think she's not there anymore. So, you know, and it also released me from that place.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's so healing to release her, but also to release you from that moment in time. And amazing the channeling that you've done, right? Like most people think, well, I'm not spiritual, or I'm not a channel. I can't talk to my loved ones on the other side. And I always, exactly what you did, I always encourage a written dialogue. Like, you know, you can call it automatic writing, which it sounds like you did, but for a lot of people, it's literally, I have a friend who is an artist, and she does witnessing back and forth with her art, and the art gives a message, and then she asks questions and she gives a message. And so it feels like that to me with your mom. It was like, okay, this is what your mom's bringing to you, and then you ask questions back, and then you receive. And it is this beautiful way of continuing the bond with your mom and healing the past, and how do I move forward. So to me, what it feels like is like the alchemy. If we're going to talk about the alchemy of grief, you alchemized it by healing your side, helping her heal her side, and then finding a place where the two of you now can move forward and maybe have more conversations. But it's karmic what you did. It's healing the karma of suicide, especially, is so intense. So yeah, I just wonder if you have any thoughts on being the channeler.
Well, I'm not.
No, you are.
I'm not. I'm not a channeler. I mean, I'm not going to put that on my business card, right? And I'm not a medium. But something magic did happen, and I 100% believe it did. And she was there, and I mean, I could hear her so clearly, and I could also hear her in the writing. I could hear her editing me, which, because she was a writer too, it was like I could hear her saying, no, I wouldn't use that line, I'd say this. And that to me was actually quite lovely and fun, that we were writing this together in a way. And this scene, there is a scene where we are back where she ended her life. And she says to me, you've got to stop meeting me here. Like, wow. I'm not here anymore. We can meet other places. Yeah. And let's meet other places, but let's stop meeting here. Wow. And that felt like her releasing me. And she, as my mom, was nudging me to let go of her so I could heal. And I resisted, honestly. I want to keep her here. I wanted to keep her close. I didn't want to let her go, because that meant I would never feel her again. So I had to really work on what that meant to let go, that I could let her go from that moment, but that didn't mean she was gone. I mean, in fact, healing on that level, right? That physical, this is what happened level. And as you move on and you release that person and she releases you, it does actually free both of you to be closer and more connected. But there is, I work with a lot of people in grief, and that is the number one fear. If I let go of the situation and the intensity of the moment, how will I maintain my bond with them? How will I ever feel her again? And I think it's so important for people to know that that's just the beginning. Yeah, I did worry about it. And it took some some real trust that she'd still be there.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's probably one of the reasons I wrote the book, to heal and to, like we talked about, channel the experience and the feelings out of my body onto the page.
Yeah.
And also, now there's this living document of how I felt. It's
Mm-hmm.
always there.
Yeah.
So maybe that was my unconscious way of anchoring it into something still tangible and real,
Mm-hmm.
but letting her go ultimately. Um, and to your point, I talk to her all the time. I was right before we got on the call, I'm like, here we go again, Mom.
I was going to ask you, what is your relationship like now? Like I mean, I know you're promoting your book and you're traveling and you're on podcasts, but like, I guess more than that, that inner connection with your mom, has it changed? What does it feel like now to you?
She doesn't come to my dreams as much. I think, I mean, I've always been a big dreamer. I dream every night and I remember them
Mm.
almost always. And she still pops in and has these little cameo bits. But I want to say she was pretty consistently present in dreams for 1 to 2 years, like almost every
Wow.
night.
Wow.
Um, so that's not happening like it did. Now we're 5, almost 6 years out from
Yeah.
her death.
Crazy.
And I feel much more at peace with her. I
Mhm.
miss her. I miss her terribly still.
Right.
And I wish she was still here. But since she's not, I will take second best, which is inviting her into my daily life.
Mhm.
I do. I talk out loud to her. I think about her. I honor her with symbolic gestures like planting flowers that she loved or making a dish that she liked to
Yeah.
cook. So
Yeah.
she's still very present.
Right.
And I talk about her with my son, who was really close to his grandmother, and to keep her still alive in our family.
Mhm.
Um, and it used to feel, I've been doing that all along, and it felt really painful at first, of course, and it still felt pretty raw for the handful of years afterwards. But now it feels okay.
Mhm.
And I hope to feel her always, and I hope to feel the loss of her always.
Yeah, I
And
don't think it goes away.
no, and I think
Yeah.
that's okay, because it's not
Right.
like this acute cutting pain like it was
Right.
initially. And now it just lives alongside me. And it's a
Mhm.
reminder that she's not here and I miss her. And that's because I loved her so
Yeah.
fiercely.
Yeah. I think my last question would be, we talk about you orbiting her son. How do you now, like, now that your book is out and it's 6 years out, like, what would you suggest to people listening in terms of like how to own your own sun and your own light? Like, how do we do that after such a deep loss, especially the relationship the two of you had, where you were so deeply connected that you didn't even realize you were kind of living off of her light a little bit?
That's a good question. Don't have
Well,
a,
maybe tell me your experience.
hmm. I wish I had a perfect answer. I think about my son now, who was 8 turning 9 when she died, and now he's 14. And he's going through this phase now, which everyone tells me is normal and natural, but feels so horribly personal and awful, honestly, where he's differentiating from me and trying to learn to become his own individual, right?
Yeah.
And I think after she died and I started to untangle from her, I went through this phase of almost being a teenager again, where I had to figure out how different I was from her to learn who I even was. And this was on the cusp of my 50th birthday, right?
Right.
And I felt sort of silly that I was just now figuring out who I was, you know, as I was entering middle age, but whatever, that's how it goes.
Right.
And in the last 6 years of really doing the work of figuring out who I am separate from her, I've now come back around and realized how similar we actually are and embracing it. And not that I am my mom, we're totally two different people,
Yeah.
but that I can embrace the qualities of her that I love that are similar, and also recognize the parts of us that I don't love so much, the tendency to withdraw or want to make everyone happy
Right.
and be like the light in the room to keep the peace, but just to recognize that those are things that we shared, and that's okay. It's okay to be similar, but that now I am more clear on who I am. And
I love that.
yeah, so for those of you listening, if you're in your 30s or 40s, just know that you will have it may take until your early 50s to
50.
figure all that out. But hey, better late than never, right?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like these earthly thresholds, grief, illness, grief, menopause, you name it, the things that we go through as people here on earth, they are moments of deep invitation to figure out who you are. You can run and hide from it, right? Or you can do what you chose to do, which is like, okay, I'm going to figure out who I am with my mom, against my mom, in relationship to my mom, but really in relationship to my own self, and how that has changed you. And I mean, I've seen changes in you. I've known you, since that time, and how that has morphed and uncovered who you really are. And it doesn't mean it doesn't sting and, it's painful, but you really used this process to figure out, like, okay, who am I really? And I'm not going to hide my light anymore. So what is that? I better figure out what that means. And I love that, although it was so tragic the way that she passed and how she chose to do it, you still like went through those layers of deep pain in order to say, like, okay, like, this is me and I'm going to figure that out. So I do think the alchemy of grief is to go in, right? You can go around it, but you're going to pay the price at some point. You went in, and I think it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't regret any of it. It was an invitation, and to step forward.
Right.
And I did resist at first, just because I'd always been a backseat kind of gal.
Right. Right.
But there was a part of me that was ready and was really ready and willing to step through that door and see what was waiting for me. And I did need those partners, and you were one of them, to help me, because it was scary and it was totally uncharted territory. But I had the knowing, enough of a knowing, that I had been playing a sort of diminished role for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And here I am on the cusp of midlife.
Mm-hmm.
And what would it be like to spend the rest of the years doing something different?
Mm-hmm.
And that was enticing enough
It's beautiful
to do it. And I'm so glad I did.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's impactful. I think to just conclude, I would love to know where you are with your book and what you're up to and what you're doing with it and how it's moving you forward.
I am able to speak about something really painful now with folks in a really intimate, visible way, which has been really exciting. As a writer, as someone who spends a lot of my time behind doors and tinkering on a keyboard and being very much in my head, it's felt wonderful to be out in the world and meeting people who have similar stories, similar grief stories, similar questions, and to feel like I'm helpful in any kind of way has been
amazing.
Such a payoff.
Amazing.
And I'm talking about my mom. So in a lot of ways, she and I have been on the road together, and that's
right.
That's been fun.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Sam, and I also really appreciate you sharing so deeply and so personally. And I think you're a kind of a vision of what the alchemy of grief is, right? Of the invitation for people to be honest, be truthful, stop hiding, be willing to continue the relationship with your loved one on the other side, and watch how it unfolds and be a part of it instead of standing on the sidelines or in the background and releasing life. Your invitation is like to go forward in life, is to go into it. And so I think my prayer for you is that you continue to find what lights you up and to shine it in your way, right? We don't have to be somebody else, but like your mom it feels to me like your mom is, instead of you kind of orbiting her, she is now orbiting you, and that she is a cheerleader for you in order for you to move forward and shine that light and be the sun in Samantha Rose's way. And so thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.